I never thought I'd be that mother. You know the one. The one whose children forget she exists until there's something to inherit. But here I am, sitting in room 247 of Meadowbrook Senior Living, and I can tell you exactly how it happens. It happens slowly, then all at once. Let me start from the beginning, because if I'm going to tell this story, I need to tell it right. My name is Margaret Ellen Whitmore, and for 76 years, I thought I knew what love meant. I thought I had built something beautiful. I thought I had raised good men. I was wrong about all of it. I married young, 22 years old, fresh out of secretarial school, and I met Richard at a company Christmas party. He was an accountant, steady and reliable, with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. We married 6 months later in a small church ceremony with 30 guests. My mother cried. His father gave a toast about building a life together, brick by brick. I wore my grandmother's pearls. Richard promised me forever. We had our first son, Michael, 11 months after the wedding. I remember holding him in the hospital, this tiny, perfect creature with Richard's nose and my stubborn chin, and feeling like my heart might explode from the fullness of it all. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment then, and I would walk Michael around the block in an old stroller my sister had passed down to us, singing to him, pointing out dogs and flowers and clouds. Richard would come home tired from work, but he'd always make time to hold his son, to read to him from picture books, even though Michael was too young to understand the words. 3 years later came David. He was different from Michael from the start. Where Michael had been calm and observant, David came into the world screaming his demands. He had colic for the first 4 months, and I walked circles around our apartment every night, bouncing him, singing the same lullabies I'd sung to Michael, my voice hoarse and my body exhausted. Richard took a second job doing taxes on weekends to save up for a house. I remember him falling asleep at the kitchen table, his face pressed against someone's 1040 form, and feeling both grateful and terrified. Grateful that he was trying so hard, terrified that we were drowning. But we made it work. We always made it work. When David was 2 and Michael was 5, Richard's second job finally paid off enough for a down payment on a small house in a decent neighborhood with good schools. It wasn't much. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a postage stamp backyard with a rusty swing set the previous owners had left behind. But it was ours. I cried the day we got the keys. I painted the boys' room blue myself, 8 months pregnant with our third son, while Richard refinished the hardwood floors. Jonathan arrived in September, right as Michael started kindergarten. He was our surprise baby, our caboose, as Richard liked to call him. He had blonde hair, unlike his dark-haired brothers, and he was quiet and sweet and always seemed to be studying the world with these serious gray eyes. I loved all my boys desperately, but I'll admit, Jonathan held a special place in my heart. Maybe because he was my last, maybe because he needed me most. He had asthma, bad asthma, and I spent countless nights in his room with a humidifier running, watching his little chest rise and fall, terrified each breath might be too hard for him. Those years were hard. Richard worked constantly. I stayed home with the boys, which sounds easy to people who have never done it, but it's not. It's a marathon that never ends. It's making 3 different lunches because David won't eat crust and Michael only eats peanut butter and Jonathan is allergic to strawberries. It's breaking up fights over toys and wiping tears after scraped knees and sitting in waiting rooms at the pediatrician's office. It's falling into bed at night too tired to even talk to your husband, then waking up at dawn to do it all over again. But I loved it. God help me, I loved every exhausting minute of it. I loved the way Michael would bring me drawings from school, elaborate scenes of dragons and castles with me labeled as the queen. I loved the way David would climb into my lap after a nightmare and fall back asleep with his head on my shoulder. I loved the way Jonathan would hold my hand when we walked to the park, his small fingers wrapped tight around mine like he was afraid I might disappear. I thought I was building something that would last. I thought I was investing in relationships that would sustain me when I got old. I thought my boys would grow up and remember all of this, remember how much I loved them, how much I sacrificed. I thought wrong. They grew up like children do. Michael was always the responsible one, the one who got straight A's and played by the rules. He went to a state university on a partial scholarship, and Richard and I paid the rest. We took out loans. We cashed in bonds my parents had given us as wedding gifts. We made it work because that's what you do for your children. Michael graduated with a degree in business administration, got a good job at a consulting firm, married a woman named Jessica who wore pearls and smiled with only her mouth. They had 2 children I barely know. David was the charmer, the one who could talk his way into or out of anything. He wanted to go to a private college, an expensive one, and he made the case with all his considerable persuasive skills. We were already stretched thin from Michael's education, but David promised he'd get scholarships, that he'd work part-time, that he'd make us proud. Richard took on more clients. I went back to work part-time at a department store, folding clothes and smiling at customers even though my feet ached and I missed being home. David went to his expensive school. He graduated with a degree in marketing and got a job in Manhattan. He married a woman named Veronica who called me Mar, even though I've never gone by Marge in my life. They have one son who they're raising to speak Mandarin because it's good for business. Jonathan was the baby, the one who stayed close longest. He had trouble in school, not with intelligence but with focus. He was diagnosed with ADD in middle school, and we spent years trying different medications, different therapists, different strategies. He barely graduated high school, but he wanted to go to college anyway. He wanted to study music. Richard and I argued about it. Richard thought Jonathan should learn a trade, something practical. I defended Jonathan's dreams. In the end, we compromised. Jonathan went to a community college for music production, and we paid for it. He never finished. He dropped out after 3 semesters and moved to California with a girl he'd met online. They broke up 6 months later. He came back and got a job managing a music store. He married a woman named Crystal who posts everything on social media. They have 3 children whose names I can never quite keep straight because I've only met them twice. Richard died 8 years ago. Heart attack at his desk at work. One minute he was reviewing a client's portfolio, the next minute he was gone. I got the call at 3 in the afternoon from his secretary, a young woman whose voice shook as she told me the paramedics had tried everything, but there was nothing they could do. I remember hanging up the phone and standing in our kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals for my family, and feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. The boys came for the funeral, all 3 of them. Michael organized everything with cold efficiency, handling the funeral home arrangements and the cemetery plot and the obituary. David gave the eulogy, a beautiful speech about Richard's dedication and work ethic that made everyone cry. Jonathan played guitar at the service, a song Richard had loved, and his voice cracked on the high notes. They were good sons that week, attentive, present, helpful. Then they went back to their lives, and I was alone in the house where I'd raised them. I tried to keep busy. I volunteered at the library. I joined a book club. I took a watercolor class at the senior center. But the house felt too big and too empty. I'd walk past the boys' old rooms, now stripped of their personalities and turned into a guest room and an office, and feel like I was living in a museum of my own life. I'd make dinner and automatically set 4 places at the table, then realize it was just me. The boys called, not often, but enough that I couldn't say they'd abandoned me entirely. Michael called every Sunday evening at exactly 7 o'clock, a duty call where he'd ask how I was, and I'd say I was fine, and we'd talk about his kids' soccer games and his latest work trip. David called sporadically, usually when he was in the car driving somewhere, and our conversations were punctuated by him yelling at other drivers. Jonathan rarely called, but he'd send text messages with strings of emojis that I didn't understand. They visited even less. Michael came at Thanksgiving the first year, but Jessica complained about the old house smell, and their daughter said my cooking was weird. They stayed in a hotel. They didn't come back the next year. David came once unannounced because he was in the area for business. He stayed for 3 hours, spent most of it on his phone, and left without eating the dinner I'd made. Jonathan promised to visit all the time but always had an excuse. Work, kids, money. California wasn't close. I started having trouble with my health 3 years after Richard died. Little things at first. I'd forget words in the middle of sentences. I'd go to the grocery store and forget what I'd come for. I'd find myself standing in rooms with no memory of why I'd gone there. Then bigger things. I fell in the kitchen and broke my wrist. I left the stove on and nearly started a fire. I got lost driving to the library, a place I'd been going to for 15 years. Michael was the one who suggested I see a doctor. I fought it, but he was insistent, and part of me was relieved to have someone take charge. The diagnosis was early-stage dementia. The doctor said it was manageable, that with medication and support, I could live independently for a while longer, but that I should start planning for the future. I called the boys after the appointment. Michael answered immediately. I told him what the doctor had said, and there was a long pause. Then he said, "Mom, we need to talk about your living situation." My living situation? I repeated, confused. I was living in my house, the house where I'd raised him. "You can't be alone anymore," he said, his voice taking on that crisp business tone he used at work. "It's not safe. You could hurt yourself. You could burn the house down. We need to look at assisted living facilities." Assisted living facilities. He made it sound so reasonable, so practical. I tried to argue. I said I was fine, that I'd be more careful, that I could hire someone to check on me. He said we'd discuss it further and hung up. I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd taught him to crack eggs and roll pie dough, and cried until my ribs hurt. The boys presented a united front, which should have been my first warning that they'd discussed this without me. Michael had researched facilities. David had looked at the financials. Jonathan had agreed with whatever his brothers said. They came together one Sunday, all three of them, the first time they'd been in my house together since Richard's funeral. Michael had spreadsheets. He'd printed them out and brought them in a leather folder. He showed me comparison charts of different nursing homes, highlighting the one he recommended. Meadowbrook Senior Living, private rooms, 24-hour nursing care, activities program, 3 meals a day. He made it sound like a resort. David talked about money. He said the house was too expensive to maintain. The roof needed replacing. The furnace was old. The property taxes were going up. He said I couldn't afford to stay here and pay for in-home care. He said Meadowbrook was the responsible choice. He didn't mention that selling the house would be financially beneficial to them. Jonathan said nothing. He sat on the couch where he used to build blanket forts as a child, staring at his hands, and said nothing. I didn't want to go. I begged them not to make me go. This was my home. This was where I'd raised them, where I'd loved their father, where every room held a memory of our life together. Michael said I was being emotional and not thinking clearly. David said I had to be realistic about my limitations. Jonathan mumbled something about it being for the best. They moved me in 6 weeks later. 6 weeks to pack up 50 years of life. 6 weeks to sort through closets full of clothes and boxes of photos and drawers of forgotten treasures. Michael hired an estate sale company. They went through my house like vultures, putting price tags on my mother's china and Richard's tools and the boys' old toys. I tried to keep certain things. The quilt my grandmother had made. Richard's wedding ring. The baby book from Michael's first year. Michael said I wouldn't have room for all that. He said I needed to downsize. He chose what I got to keep. The house sold in 2 weeks. Michael said they got a good price. He said the money would go into an account to pay for my care. He didn't show me the paperwork. He said I didn't need to worry about it, that he'd handle everything. I signed where he told me to sign. Meadowbrook Senior Living is not a resort. It's a warehouse for old people waiting to die. My room is small, barely big enough for a bed, a chair, and a narrow dresser. The walls are beige. The floor is linoleum. There's one window that looks out at the parking lot. I can see the dumpsters from here. The staff is mostly kind, but they're overworked and underpaid. They move through their shifts like zombies, doing the minimum required. They check my vitals, bring my pills, help me to the bathroom if I need it. But there's no warmth to it. No connection. I'm just another old body to process. Except for Sarah. Sarah works the night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. She's young, maybe 35, with brown hair she pulls back in a ponytail and tired eyes that still manage to be kind. I don't know much about her life. She doesn't talk about herself much. But I know she has a daughter, that she's a single mother, that she works this shift so she can be home during the day when her daughter gets out of school. The first night I cried at Meadowbrook, Sarah found me. I'd been holding it together during the day, putting on a brave face, but at night, alone in the sterile room, I broke. I sobbed into my pillow, trying to be quiet but unable to stop the sounds from escaping. Sarah came in during her rounds. She could have just checked my jaw. RT and left. Instead, she sat down on the edge of my bed and held my hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay to be sad. This is hard. It's so hard." I cried harder because someone finally acknowledged that this was hard, that I wasn't being dramatic or emotional or difficult. Someone finally saw me. She stayed with me until I fell asleep, just sitting there, holding my hand, occasionally rubbing small circles on my back. After that, Sarah started spending extra time in my room. She'd come in during her rounds and ask how I was really doing, not the polite surface question, but the real question. She'd sit and listen to me talk about Richard, about the boys when they were small, about the life I used to have. She brought me real coffee one night, good coffee from a shop near her apartment, because the coffee here tastes like dirty water. She smuggled in cookies her daughter had made in her 3rd grade class, lopsided and overbaked, but made with love. She treated me like I was still a person with a history, with feelings, with value. Not just a room number, not just a medication list, not just a body taking up space. My sons visit once a year. Michael comes in December, right before Christmas. He stays for exactly 1 hour. He brings a poinsettia that the staff will throw away after he leaves because I can't take care of it. He sits in the plastic chair by the window and tells me about his work, his children's achievements, his vacation plans. He checks his watch 3 times. He asks if I need anything, but it's clear he hopes the answer is no. He pats my hand when he leaves and says he'll see me next year. He doesn't hug me. David came in March last year. He was in town for a conference. He showed up in his expensive suit, looking uncomfortable and out of place among the walkers and wheelchairs. He stayed for 45 minutes. He talked about a big marketing campaign he was working on. He showed me pictures on his phone of Veronica's latest dinner party. He mentioned casually that he'd need to leave early to make his flight. When I asked about his son, he gave me a blank look for a second before saying, "Oh, Cameron's great, really great, learning Mandarin." He hasn't visited since. Jonathan came in October. He brought Crystal and 2 of their 3 kids. The visit was chaos. The children ran around my room touching everything, and Crystal kept taking photos for Instagram, posing the kids next to my wheelchair with captions I'm sure said something about honoring grandma. Jonathan looked uncomfortable the whole time, like he wanted to be anywhere else. They stayed for 30 minutes. Crystal posted the photos with a lengthy caption about the importance of family. They got thousands of likes. That's it, 3 visits in an entire year, 3 hours out of their lives, and I know why they come. They're checking to see if I'm still alive. They're making sure I haven't died yet and left them with unfinished business. They're maintaining the appearance of being good sons without actually having to do any of the work of being good sons. They don't know I've changed my will. They don't know that last Tuesday, I had a lawyer come to Meadowbrook. A nice woman named Patricia who specializes in elder law. She came to my room and spread paperwork on my bed and asked me what I wanted to do with my estate. My estate. It sounds grand, doesn't it? But it's real. The sale of the house brought in $412,000. Richard had a life insurance policy and a pension. There are investments, bonds, accounts I'd almost forgotten about. All told, I'm leaving behind just over $1.8 million. Michael has been managing my finances since I moved here. He sends me a monthly statement that I can barely understand, full of numbers and percentages and terms I don't know. He tells me I'm spending too much, that I need to be more careful. He cut off my cable because he said it was an unnecessary expense. He questioned why I needed money for a haircut. Meanwhile, he transferred himself power of attorney. He made himself the executor of my will. He set everything up so that when I die, he and his brothers inherit everything equally, just like Richard and I had originally planned. But that's not what's going to happen now. Patricia helped me write a new will. It was surprisingly simple. I revoked all previous wills. I removed Michael as executor and appointed Patricia instead. I left token amounts to each of my sons, $1,000 each, just enough that they can't claim I forgot about them. The rest, everything else, all $1.8 million, goes to Sarah Chen, night shift nurse at Meadowbrook Senior Living. Patricia asked if I was sure. She explained that my sons would likely contest it, that there would be legal battles, that they would argue I wasn't of sound mind. I told her I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. I told her to make it ironclad. She did. I signed the new will in my small room, witnessed by Patricia and another lawyer she'd brought. They notarized it. They filed it. It's legal and binding. My sons have no idea. I think about their faces when they find out. I imagine Michael getting the call from Patricia, being told to come to her office for the reading of the will. He'll be annoyed at the inconvenience, but certain of what's coming. He'll sit in that office in his expensive suit, David next to him in his designer clothes, Jonathan on the other side, probably checking his phone. Patricia will read the document, and they'll wait impatiently for her to get to the part about the money. And then she'll say it. The remainder of the estate, totaling approximately $1.8 million, is bequeathed to Sarah Chen. I imagine the silence, the confusion, the dawning realization. I imagine Michael's face turning red, David standing up and demanding to see the document, Jonathan finally looking up from his phone with his mouth open. I imagine their shock, their outrage, their disbelief. And I hope, somewhere from wherever I am, I'll be able to see it. I hope I'll be able to watch as they realize what they've lost. Not the money, though I know that's all they'll focus on, but the chance to have actually known me in my final years, the chance to have been the kind of sons who deserved an inheritance, the chance to have shown up, really shown up, when I needed them. They'll be angry, they'll claim I was manipulated, they'll say Sarah took advantage of a confused old woman. They'll hire lawyers and fight it in court, but Patricia says the will is solid. I had a cognitive assessment done the same day to prove my mental competency. I have documentation of my son's visits, the logs that Meadowbrook keeps of all visitors. The pattern is clear. 3 visits in a year, 3 hours. That's what they thought I was worth. Sarah doesn't know yet. I haven't told her. I don't want to burden her with it or change our relationship. I don't want her to feel obligated to me or to act differently. I just want these last months or years or however long I have left to be real. To have at least one person in my life who sees me, who values me, who treats me with genuine kindness. She deserves this money more than they do. She's raising a daughter alone, working nights, barely scraping by. She could use it for her daughter's education, for a house, for security. She could use it for all the things mothers do when they love their children. All the things I did for my sons. Maybe she'll think of me sometimes when she uses that money. Maybe she'll tell her daughter about the old woman she took care of, about how important it is to treat people with dignity, about how small kindnesses matter. Maybe her daughter will grow up to be the kind of person who doesn't forget about her mother. I know I'm dying. The doctors don't say it directly, but I can see it in their faces. The dementia is progressing. Some days are worse than others. Some days I don't remember where I am or how I got here. But I still have moments of clarity, like right now, where I know exactly what I'm doing and why. I'm taking back control of the one thing I have left. My money, my choice, my revenge, if you want to call it that, though it feels more like justice. My sons taught me that love is conditional, that family is just a word, that the people you sacrifice everything for will abandon you when you're no longer useful. They taught me that I was a fool for believing that the bonds between mother and child are unbreakable. They broke them. Easily, without even seeming to notice. So I'm breaking my bond with them. Legally, financially, finally. Last night, Sarah came in during her rounds and found me awake. I've been having trouble sleeping lately, my mind too full of thoughts, memories, plans. She sat down in the plastic chair and asked if I wanted to talk. "Tell me about your daughter," I said. She smiled, the kind of smile that transforms her tired face into something beautiful. "Emma's doing great. She's in the school play. She's playing a tree." "A tree," I laughed. "She's very excited about it. She's been practicing standing still. She has 2 lines." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me pictures. A little girl with dark hair and her mother's kind eyes, wearing a brown costume with paper leaves taped to her arms, grinning at the camera. "She's beautiful," I said and meant it. "She wants to be an actress when she grows up, or a veterinarian, or a chef. It changes daily." Sarah laughed. "I just want her to be happy, you know? I want her to have options. I want her to go to college if she wants to not have to work 3 jobs like I did to have a life that's easier than mine." "You're a good mother," I told her. She looked surprised, then pleased. "I try. It's hard doing it alone, but we manage." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then she asked, "Do you want to see more pictures?" "I have 1,000,000. Fair warning, I'm one of those annoying moms who thinks their kid is the most interesting thing in the world." "I'd love to see them," I said. She showed me photos of Emma's first day of school, Emma's birthday party, Emma's soccer game where she apparently scored a goal, and then sat down in the middle of the field to pick flowers. She told me stories about Emma's hilarious observations about the world, about how she insists on wearing mismatched socks because she likes being unique, about how she reads under the covers with a flashlight after bedtime. I watched Sarah's face as she talked, the love there so clear, so pure. This is what it's supposed to look like. This is what I thought I had with my boys. This is what Sarah has with Emma, and what Emma will, I hope, always have with her mother. When Sarah left to continue her rounds, she squeezed my hand and told me to try to get some sleep. I fell asleep thinking about Emma, hoping she grows up knowing how lucky she is. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I was for a long time. I spent months raging against my sons, against the unfairness of it all, against the fact that I'd given them everything and gotten nothing in return. But anger is exhausting, and I don't have the energy for it anymore. Now I just feel clear, certain, at peace with my decision. Michael, David, and Jonathan will be fine. They have successful careers, healthy families, comfortable lives. They don't need my money. They want it, certainly. They probably already have plans for it, ways they've mentally spent their inheritance. But they don't need it. Sarah needs it, Emma needs it, and more than that, they've earned it. Not through blood relation or genetic obligation, but through simple human decency. Through showing up, through giving a damn. That's worth more than being someone's mother ever was. I keep the new will in my bedside drawer, underneath a stack of old photos and the quilt my grandmother made. Sometimes I take it out and read it just to remind myself it's real. Patricia gave me 3 copies, all properly notarized and legal. One stays with her. One is in a safe deposit box. One is here with me. I imagine sometimes what Michael will say when he finds out. I know him well enough to predict it. He'll say I was confused, that I didn't understand what I was doing. He'll say Sarah manipulated me, took advantage of my weakened mental state. He'll paint himself as the concerned son who was protecting his poor, addled mother from predators. He'll be convincing. He's always been good at rewriting history, at making himself the hero of every story. But the evidence doesn't support his narrative. Patricia made sure of that. There are doctors' assessments. There are visitor logs. There are witnesses who will testify that I was lucid and determined, that I knew exactly what I was doing. David will hire the best lawyers money can buy. He'll throw everything at this, treating it like a marketing campaign he needs to win. He'll be strategic and ruthless because that's who he is. But Patricia says we anticipated that. The will was written to withstand challenges. Every potential loophole was closed. Jonathan will probably cry. He'll give interviews about how much he loved his grandmother, how he feels betrayed, how he can't understand how she could do this. He'll get sympathy on social media. Crystal will post old photos of me with hashtags about family and forgiveness. It will all be very touching and very fake. But none of it will matter. The money will go to Sarah. Patricia will make sure of it. Sometimes I wonder if I should tell Sarah before I die, if I should prepare her for what's coming. But I think the surprise will be better. I think waking up one day to a phone call from a lawyer telling her she's inherited nearly $2 million will be one of the best moments of her life. I want to give her that. I want her to have that moment of pure, unexpected joy. I hope she uses some of it to take Emma on vacation. Somewhere special. Disney World, maybe, or Hawaii. Somewhere where a little girl who loves mismatched socks and playing trees in school plays can make memories with her mother. I hope she quits this job and finds something with better hours so she can see her daughter more. I hope she buys a house with a backyard where Emma can play. I hope she sleeps easy at night knowing her daughter's college is paid for, that their future is secure. I hope she thinks of me fondly, but not too sadly. I hope she tells Emma that I was kind, that I was grateful, that I wanted good things for them. I don't need to be remembered as a saint or a martyr. I just want to be remembered as someone who saw kindness and rewarded it. The dementia is getting worse. I have more bad days than good ones now. Sometimes I forget where I am. Sometimes I think I'm back in my house and I call for Richard, confused when he doesn't answer. Sometimes I think the boys are young again. And I look for them, wondering where they've gone to play. But in my clear moments, I know exactly where I am and what I've done. And I'm proud of it. There's a strange freedom in knowing you're dying, in knowing that the opinions of others no longer matter because you won't be around to hear them. I don't have to maintain relationships anymore. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to smile and say everything is fine when my sons make their obligatory visits. I can just exist, honestly, in whatever time I have left. Sarah understands this, I think. She's seen enough people die in this place to recognize the signs. She's never asked me directly about it, but sometimes when she sits with me, there's a gentleness in her eyes that says she knows. She makes sure I'm comfortable. She asks if I'm in pain. She tells me it's okay to let go when I'm ready. I'm not ready yet, not quite. I want to make it to Christmas if I can. I want one more holiday, even if it's in this depressing room. Sarah promised she'd bring Emma by on Christmas Eve. They're going to sing carols in the common room, and she said Emma specifically wanted to make sure I was there. That's something worth staying alive for. One more Christmas with someone who actually wants me there. Michael will visit on December 23rd. He always comes right before Christmas, never on Christmas itself. That's reserved for his real family, his important family. I'll sit in my chair and listen to him talk about his vacation plans, his children's expensive gifts, his wife's holiday party. I'll nod and smile and say all the right things, and I'll know something he doesn't know. I'll know that in a few months, maybe a year if I'm lucky, he'll walk into Patricia's office expecting to walk out a rich man. I'll know that the shock on his face will be worth every lonely night I've spent in this room. I'll know that for once, just once, my choices will matter more than his plans. Is that terrible? Am I a terrible mother for feeling this way? Maybe, probably, but I don't care anymore. I spent 76 years trying to be good, trying to be selfless, trying to put everyone else's needs before my own. Where did it get me? Here. Alone. Forgot. Warehoused like outdated inventory. So yes, I'm taking my revenge. I'm making sure my final act in this world is one that can't be ignored or dismissed or explained away. I'm making sure that even after I'm gone, they'll have to think about me, have to talk about me, have to grapple with what they did and what they lost. And Sarah will be financially secure for the rest of her life. That matters too. That matters a lot, actually. This isn't just about punishing my sons. It's about rewarding someone who deserves it, someone who showed me humanity when I needed it most. Last week, I had a particularly bad day. I woke up confused and disoriented, not knowing where I was or who anyone was. I got agitated, trying to get out of bed, convinced I needed to make breakfast for Richard and the boys. The day shift nurse tried to calm me down, but I was too far gone, lost in a memory from 40 years ago. Sarah came in early that day. She wasn't even supposed to be working, but she came in for an extra shift because they were understaffed. She found me in the hallway, crying and confused, calling for my boys. She could have just redirected me to my room and moved on. Instead, she wrapped her arm around my shoulders and walked with me. "Your boys are at school," she said gently, playing along with my delusion. "They'll be home later. For now, why don't we have some tea and you can tell me about them?" She took me to the common room, made me chamomile tea, and sat with me for an hour while I rambled about Michael's science fair project and David's little league game and Jonathan's asthma. She nodded and asked questions and treated my confused memories with respect and tenderness. Eventually, reality filtered back in. I looked around the common room with its institutional furniture and old people in wheelchairs and realized where I was when I was. "I'm sorry," I whispered, embarrassed. "Don't be," Sarah said, squeezing my hand. "You have nothing to apologize for." That's why she's getting the money. Not because she's pleasant or because she does her job adequately, but because when I was at my most vulnerable, my most confused, my most human, she treated me with dignity. She didn't mock me or dismiss me or treat me like a burden. She met me where I was and made me feel safe. My sons never did that. Even when I was healthy, even when I was the one taking care of them, they never made me feel safe. They made me feel useful. They made me feel necessary. But safe, valued, loved unconditionally, never. I've been thinking a lot about what kind of mother I was. I thought I was a good one. I thought I did everything right. But maybe I didn't. Maybe I gave them too much, and in doing so, I taught them that everything should come easily. Maybe I sacker. Ifist too much of myself, and they learned that mothers are limitless resources to be used and discarded. Maybe I failed them in some fundamental way, and that's why they turned out like this. Or maybe it has nothing to do with me. Maybe some people are just takers. Maybe some people are born with the capacity for deep love and empathy, and some people aren't. Maybe I've been torturing myself for years over something that was never in my control. Sarah's daughter Emma is 7 years old. At 7, Michael was already showing signs of the man he'd become. Responsible, yes, but also rigid, judgmental. He had very clear ideas about how things should be, and he got upset when reality didn't match his expectations. I remember him crying once because I served dinner 15 minutes late. Not because he was that hungry, but because dinner was always at 6, and it was 6:15, and that was wrong. David at 7 was charming and manipulative. He could talk his way out of any punishment. He'd look at me with those big eyes and say exactly what I wanted to hear, and even though I knew he was playing me, it worked every time. He never felt genuine remorse for anything. He just learned to say sorry convincingly. Jonathan at 7 was anxious and clingy. He followed me everywhere, terrified I'd disappear if he let me out of his sight. I thought it was sweet then. Now I wonder if even as a child, he sensed his own weakness, his own inability to stand on his own. He's 43 years old now and still can't make a decision without his wife's approval. Emma, from what Sarah tells me, is none of these things. She's confident but kind. She's creative but grounded. She stands up for herself but also stands up for others. Just last week, Sarah told me that Emma befriended a girl at school who was being bullied, sat with her at lunch every day, and told the bullies to stop. When they didn't, Emma told the teacher. She didn't want credit for it. She just wanted the bullying to stop. That's not something any of my sons would have done at 7, or 17, or 47. Maybe good people raise selfish children, and flawed people raise good ones. Or maybe there's no pattern at all, and I'm just desperately trying to make sense of how 3 children I loved more than life itself could grow up to abandon me without a second thought. The other residents here have different stories. Mrs. Chen down the hall has 7 children, and they all visit regularly, rotating who comes when, making sure she's never alone on holidays. She complains about them constantly, about how they hover and nag and treat her like she's fragile. I'd kill for that kind of attention. Mr. Rodriguez has 2 daughters who live across the country. They can't visit often, but they call every single day, sometimes twice a day. They set up a video chat system so they can see his face. They send care packages. On his birthday last month, they flew in to surprise him. He cried so hard I thought he'd make himself sick. Mrs. Patterson has no children at all. Her husband died 20 years ago. She has a niece who visits monthly and genuinely seems to enjoy it. They laugh together. They have inside jokes. The niece brings books they both read and then discuss. It's a real relationship. I have 3 sons and 12 hours of their time per year. I'm the object of pity among people who have far less than I do. There's a hierarchy in places like this, an unspoken social structure. The residents with involved families are at the top. They have visitors to show off, evidence that they mattered to someone, that their lives had meaning. Then there are the residents with distant but dutiful families, the ones who get calls and cards and occasional visits. They're not at the top, but they're respected. Then there's the bottom tier, the forgotten ones, the ones whose rooms stay empty on visiting days, whose phones never ring, whose mailboxes never fill. I'm one of them now, though I'm still relatively new to this status. Some residents have been here 5, 10 years with no visitors at all. They sit in the common room staring at the door, hoping today will be the day someone remembers they exist. It never is. It's a special kind of hell, being forgotten while you're still alive. Ghosts have more presence than we do. At least ghosts haunt people. We just exist, taking up space, using up resources, waiting for death with an audience of no one. Sometimes I sit in that common room with the other forgotten ones, and we don't talk about it. We don't acknowledge what we have in common. Instead, we make small talk about the weather or the terrible food or whatever nonsense is on the television. We maintain the fiction that we're here by choice, that our families are simply busy, that the lack of visitors is circumstantial rather than intentional. But we all know the truth. Our children, our families, the people we spent our lives loving and serving have moved on. We're footnotes in. They're stories now, obligations they fulfill with the minimum possible effort, boxes to check on their way to their real lives. Sarah sees it. She's worked here long enough to recognize the patterns. She's extra kind to those of us at the bottom of the hierarchy. She remembers our names, our preferences, our stories. She asks about our pasts like they matter. She treats us like we're still people with histories and personalities, not just bodies waiting to stop functioning. That's rare. Most of the staff here are kind enough, but they're too overwhelmed, too underpaid, too exhausted to invest emotionally. They do what needs to be done and move on. Sarah does more. She gives pieces of herself. She cares. And in a place like this, caring is the most valuable currency there is. I asked her once why she does it, why she gives so much when she's clearly stretched so thin. She thought about it for a while before answering. My mom was a nurse, she finally said. She worked in hospice care. When I was Emma's age, I asked her why she wanted to be around dying people all day. She told me that everyone deserves to be seen, really seen, at least once before they go. She said it was the most important work she could do. She sounds like a wise woman, I said. She died when I was 15. Cancer. Sarah's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. I wasn't old enough to really appreciate what she'd taught me until I started doing this work myself. Now I get it. Now I understand why she felt it was so important. She'd be proud of you, I told her. I hope so, Sarah said softly. That conversation stays with me. Everyone deserves to be seen. My sons don't see me. They look at me, sure, during their annual visits, but they don't see me. They see an obligation, an inconvenience, an eventual inheritance. They see the role I play in their narrative, not the person I actually am. Sarah sees me. She sees Margaret, the woman who loved her husband and raised her children and tried her best and ended up here anyway. She sees my fear and my loneliness and my fading grasp on reality. She sees me, and she doesn't turn away. That's worth $1.8 million. That's worth everything I have to give. I'm not under any illusions that Sarah and I have some deep personal connection. She's kind to all the forgotten residents, not just me. This isn't about her loving me like a daughter or me replacing my sons with her. It's simpler and more profound than that. It's about recognizing human decency and rewarding it. It's about putting my money where my values are. It's about making sure that in death, I do something meaningful, since my life apparently didn't matter as much as I thought it did. My sons will call me vindictive. They'll say I was bitter and cruel, that I lashed out to hurt them. They'll paint themselves as victims of an unstable old woman's final act of spite. But here's what they'll never understand. This isn't about hurting them. If I wanted to hurt them, there are crueler things I could do. I could tell them exactly what I think of them. I could enumerate their failures as sons, could catalog every disappointment, every moment they chose their comfort over my needs. I could write letters detailing how thoroughly they've destroyed whatever love I once had for them. But I'm not doing that. I'm not even going to tell them about the will change. I'm just going to die, quietly, in this room, surrounded by beige walls and the smell of industrial cleaner. And then the lawyer will call, and they'll find out what their years of neglect cost them. That's not cruelty. That's consequences. That's the universe for once working the way it should. That's karma, delivered via legal document. And Sarah will get a call too, from the same lawyer, and she'll find out that her kindness had value, that treating people with dignity matters, that showing up counts for something. If I could orchestrate it, I'd want to die on a night when Sarah's working. I'd want her to be the one who finds me, who closes my eyes, who makes sure I look peaceful. I'd want her to be the last person I see. Not my sons, who'll rush in afterward full of performative grief, but Sarah, who actually knew me, who actually cared. She'll cry, I think, not because she loved me, but because she has a good heart, and death affects her even after all these years of seeing it. She'll probably feel guilty, wondering if there was something more she could have done. I hope Patricia tells her quickly about the inheritance. I hope it eases whatever guilt she feels. I hope she understands that she did more than enough, that she gave me exactly what I needed when I needed it most. My last will and testament is more than a legal document. It's my voice, speaking after I'm gone, saying things I couldn't say in life. It's saying that love is action, not blood. It's saying that showing up matters more than shared DNA. It's saying that I choose Sarah, with her tired eyes and our gentle hands and her willingness to sit with confused old women in the middle of the night, over the 3 men I gave birth to. It's saying that I deserved better than what I got. And since I can't change what happened, I can at least change what happens next. Michael will probably try to negotiate. He'll call Patricia and offer Sarah a settlement, some fraction of the inheritance if she'll agree not to contest. He'll try to make it sound reasonable, like he's being generous. Sarah, if you're reading this somehow, if this ever gets back to you, don't take it. You're entitled to every penny. Don't let them bully you into accepting less. David will try intimidation. He'll hint at legal consequences, at investigations into elder abuse, at ways he can make her life difficult. He'll use his marketing skills to craft a narrative where she's the villain. Don't believe him, Sarah. You did nothing wrong. You were just kind. The will is legal and ironclad. Jonathan will try sympathy. He'll cry and talk about how much he loved his grandmother, how he's struggling financially, how unfair this is to his children. He'll make it personal and emotional. Don't fall for it, Sarah. He's had years to show that love. He chose not to. His financial struggles are not your responsibility. Stand your ground. Patricia will help you. The law is on your side. And somewhere, wherever I am, I'll be cheering you on. I'm tired now. The medications make me drowsy, and the effort of staying lucid long enough to think through all of this is exhausting. But I'm content. I've done what I needed to do. I've taken control of the one thing I had left to control. I've made sure my final act matters. To my sons, if you're somehow reading this, if this is being read aloud at some point, I loved you. I loved you so much it consumed my entire life. I gave you everything I had, and it still wasn't enough. You taught me that love isn't always returned, that sacrifice isn't always appreciated, that being someone's mother doesn't guarantee their devotion. You taught me these lessons in the cruelest possible way, but I learned them nonetheless. I don't hate you, I just don't choose you anymore. I'm choosing someone who chose me, who saw me when you looked away, who held my hand when you checked your watches. I'm choosing kindness over obligation, presence over blood. You'll be fine without my money. You were always going to be fine. You're successful, capable, secure. You don't need me or anything I have to offer. You never did. That was clear from the moment you signed the papers to put me here. So this is goodbye, not a bitter goodbye, not an angry goodbye, just goodbye, go live your lives, be successful, raise your children, take your vacations. Do all the things you were always going to do anyway. And maybe, sometimes, think about the mother you had and the mother you wish you'd been to me. That's all I can hope for, really. That somewhere in your busy lives, in your comfortable existences, you'll have a moment where you wonder if you could have done better, if you should have done better. If the woman lying in room 247 at Meadowbrook Senior Living deserved more than 3 hours a year. The answer is yes, I did deserve more, but I'm not going to waste my last days being angry about it. I'm just going to die knowing I made one good choice at the end, one choice that reflects my values rather than my obligations. Sarah, when you get that phone call from Patricia, I hope you're sitting down. I hope Emma is with you. I hope you cry happy tears and hug your daughter tight. I hope you take that money and build a beautiful life. Go back to school if you want. Buy a house with a big backyard. Take Emma to see the world. Save for her future. Do all the things mothers do when they love their children and have the means to show it. And sometimes, maybe on Emma's birthday or on quiet Tuesday nights when you're tucking her into bed, think about the old woman in room 247. Remember that she saw something in you worth celebrating, worth rewarding, worth remembering. Remember that in her final act, she chose light over darkness, gratitude over resentment, you over them. That's my legacy. Not 3 successful sons who couldn't be bothered to visit their dying mother, but one act of recognition, of justice, of love given to someone who earned it. I can live with that, or die with it, as the case may be. The light is fading in my room now. Evening is coming. Soon Sarah will arrive for her shift. She'll peek in, ask how I'm doing, maybe sit with me for a few minutes if she has time. And I'll smile at her, this woman who gave me dignity when everyone else gave me pity or indifference. And I'll think about the secret I'm keeping, the surprise that awaits her, the future I'm giving her and Emma. And I'll feel, maybe for the first time since Richard died, like I matter, like my choices matter, like I'm still a person with agency and power and the ability to affect the world. LD. That's enough. After 76 years of giving everything to everyone else, of putting myself last, of believing that mothers exist only to serve, I finally put myself first. I finally said, I matter. My feelings matter. My comfort matters. My happiness matters. And I'm going to reward the one person who treated me like I matter. So yes, Michael. Yes, David. Yes, Jonathan, I changed my will. I left you each $1,000. Not because I'm cruel, but because I'm fair. $1,000 for every year you visited. $3,000 total, split 3 ways. That's more than you earned. The rest goes to Sarah Chen, night shift nurse, single mother, the kindest person I've met in my final years. She deserves it. She earned it. And no amount of legal maneuvering or emotional manipulation or rewritten history will change that. This is my final decision. This is my choice. This is my will in every sense of the word. And I can't wait to see their faces from heaven when the lawyer reads the first line.